Hello my dear students. This is Form 2 English Language First Term Unit 2 Lesson 2. Houston, we have a problem. Pages 28 to 33 of Skills in Nonfiction, Book 2. Objectives of the lesson. At the end of this lesson, you will be able to read and understand the comprehension passage given. And you will be able to improve your vocabulary. You will be able to add some new words to your vocabulary by the end of this lesson. Also, you will learn the correct spellings of several AI words. In grammar, you will learn positive and negative sentences and interrogative sentences in the present tense and past tense. The last one is about text level work. You will be introduced to autobiography writing in the third person. Let's move on to the lesson. Houston, we have a problem. Now I would like to give you some background information about this lesson. As you can see the pictures here, this lesson is about some astronauts. This is Jim Lovell. He was the commander of Apollo 13 and he had contacts with the NASA main mission control center. Background information. Houston, we have a problem is a popular quotation from the radio communications between the Apollo 13 astronaut John Swigert and the NASA Mission Control Center during the Apollo 13 space flight, as the astronauts communicated their discovery of the explosion that crippled their spacecraft. So while they were planning to land on the moon, they realized on the way to the moon, they realized that there was an explosion and something wrong in the spacecraft. Yes. So they had to contact their main control center, and this is what John Swigert said. Houston, we have a problem. Before we start the lesson, we need to learn some words that would be there in the passage. That you need to know the meanings of these words. While we are reading the passage, these words will be useful. These meanings will be useful for you. So the word Odyssey, they are using Odyssey. Odyssey is the command module of Apollo 13. Now in the rocket, there is a special place called command module in the Apollo 13 rocket. That place is called the Odyssey. Then this term, paid off instantly, that means is successful or it was useful for them. Tenuously means thinly, very small substance. Then the word venting means passing out. Things are going out. Then ratty data, that means data which makes a person angry or worried. The word breached means broken. Iridescent halo. Now I have given you a picture for you to understand the meaning exactly. Iridescent means rainbow-like colors. Halo is kind of circular rainbow-like colors seen is called the iridescent halo. Capcom. Capcom is a shortened form of capsule communicator. A Capcom's chief role is to bridge two worlds. Now there are two worlds, that of Mission Control Center on Earth and that of astronaut in space. So this communication between the two is called Capcom. Vantage means a viewpoint. Affirmed is confirmed. Preceded is led, past tense of lead, leading. So when you say preceded, that means led. Palpable is obvious. Triumph is success or victory. Metamorphosed means changed. Imminent is immediate. Substantial is significant, very important. Entranced is spellbound, or like you are so surprised. Oscillations is vibrations. So these words will be later in the word level work for you to write the meanings, and that moment also some of these words will be useful. Now that you know the meanings of these words, we can go on reading the passage and you will find them in the passage while we read it. So let's start reading the passage. You get some background information again at the top of the page. Apollo 13 was launched at 1313 on 11th April 1970. It carried Jim Lovell, Fred Hayes, and Jack Swigert on a lunar mission. So as you know, Luna is moon. Only 55 hours into the flight, disaster struck. So there is a problem. A mysterious explosion rocked the ship. Its oxygen and power began draining away. That means they started losing oxygen and power from the spaceship. Had the ship been hit by a meteorite? Jim Lovell took a look out of the window. So he's the captain. He looked out of the window to see what happened. So we'll start the passage. In the hope that whatever problem Odyssey might have, we learned what Odyssey means, would somehow make itself clear. The odds of diagnosing, that means trying to understand, the ship's illness this way were long. But as it turned out, they paid off instantly. It became very successful. As soon as Lovell pressed his nose to the glass, his eyes caught a thin, white, gassy cloud surrounding his craft, crystallizing on contact with space and forming an iridescent halo. So I have shown you the picture. You should be able to create a picture now in your mind as well. That extended tenuously for miles in all directions. So Jim Lovell saw this cloud, right? The iridescent halo going out of his ship. Lovell drew a breath and began to suspect he might be in deep, deep trouble. If there's one thing a spacecraft commander doesn't want to see when he looks out his window is something venting from his ship. Something going out or passing out from a ship is one thing that a commander doesn't want to see. Now they are in the space. Nobody can help them. In the same way that airline pilots fear smoke on a wing. Now, in ordinary flights, how pilots become scared when they saw smoke on a wing, space pilots fear venting. In the same way, commanders in spaceships fear venting. Venting can never be dismissed as instrumentation. Venting can never be brushed off as ratty data. That's something that makes a captain worried or angry. Venting means that something has breached the integrity of your craft and is slowly, perhaps fatally. So this is going to be fatal. Sometimes they might die. Bleeding is essence out into space. Now the spacecraft is bleeding. That is metaphorical, right? As if we are bleeding from our body. Now oxygen and power is losing from the spacecraft. Lowell gazed at the growing gas cloud. If the fuel cells hadn't killed his lunar touchdown, this certainly did. In a way, he felt strangely philosophical. Risk of the trade, rules of the game, and all that. He knew that his landing on the moon was never a sure thing until the footpads of the LEM had settled into the lunar dust. So, as long as you are on space, anything can happen. So, he knew that going to the moon is not going to happen exactly until you keep your foot on the moon. And now it looks as if they never would. Now he knows that he can't go to the moon at all. There is something wrong with this spaceship. At some point, Lowell understood. He'd mourned this fact, but this time was not now. Now he had to tell Houston. Houston is the main control center. He has to inform. Where they were still checking their instrumentation and analyzing their readouts. That the answer did not lie in the data but in a growing cloud surrounding the ailing ship. Now the ship is sick, ailing. It looks to me, Lowell told the ground uninfectedly. He was not so panicking. He just, in a matter of fact tone, he said that we are venting something. Then, for impact and perhaps to persuade himself, he repeated, we are venting something into space. Roger, Lusma responded in the mandatory matter of fact of Capcom. We learned these words, so you should be able to understand now. We copy your venting. Now from the main center, they are informing the commander, yes, we also notice it. We copy. It's a gas of some sort, Lowell said. Now this is the communication between the space center and the spaceship. Can you tell us something about it? Where is it coming from? It's coming out of window 1 right now, Jack, Lowell answered, offering only as much detail as his limited vantage point provided. That is the place where he had the view. It's limited. He could only see it's coming out of window 1. The understated report from the spacecraft tore through the control room like a bullet. Crew think they are venting something, Losma said to the loop at large. I hear that, Kranz said. Copy that flight? Losma asked, just to be sure. Rob, Kranz assured him. Okay, everybody, let's think of the kind of things we'd be venting. GNC, you got anything that looks abnormal on your system? Negative flight. Now here flight means the way they are responding to their head. No, we don't. Now one person says that is he was asked whether you got anything looks abnormal. He said no. How about you, EECOM? You see anything with the instrumentation you got that could be venting? That's affirmed, that is confirmed flight, Liebert got said, thinking of course of oxygen tank 2. Now Liebert got thought it's the oxygen tank 2. If a tank of gas is suddenly reading empty and a cloud of gas is surrounding a spacecraft, it's a good bet the two are connected, especially if the whole mess had been preceded by a suspicious ship-shaking bang. Now they experienced a very huge explosion as well. So they are thinking that the oxygen tank too is leaking. Let me look at the system as far as venting is concerned. Lieber got told to flight. Okay, let's start scanning. Franz agreed. I assume you called in your backup ecom to see if we can get some more brain power on this thing. We got one here. Rob, the change on the loop and in the room was palpable. No one said anything out loud. No one declared anything officially. But the controllers began to recognize that Apollo 13, which had been launched in triumph with great success just over 2 days earlier, might have just changed, right? Metamorphosed is change from a brilliant mission of exploration to one of simple survival. Now there is no mission of exploration. Now they can't go to the moon. Now you have to save the astronauts inside. So now it has changed into a game of survival. As this realization broke across the room, Franz came on the loop. Okay, he began. Let's everybody keep cool. Let's make sure we don't do anything that's going to blow out electrical power or to cause us to lose fuel cell number 2. Let's solve the problem. But let's not make it worse by guessing. So he becomes very strong. He said, don't guess. We have to check clearly, closely. Lowell, Swigert, and Hayes could not hear Kranz's speech. Now they are in the spaceship. The speech is going on in the main space center. But at the moment, didn't need to be told to keep cool. The moon landing was definitely off. Now they are not going to the moon. They know that. But beyond that, they were probably in no imminent danger. Maybe no danger. As Kranz has pointed out, fuel cell 2 was fine. As the crew and controllers knew, oxygen tank 1 was healthy as well. Now they are checking to see both oxygen tanks are okay. Not for nothing did NASA design its ship with backup system after backup system. So they have several backup systems. A spacecraft with one cell and one tank of air might not be fit to take you to Framuro, but it was surely fit to take you back to Earth. So do have several fuel tanks. Lowell drifted over to the center of the command module to get a read on his remaining oxygen tank and see how much of the margin of error it would provide them. Now, how much is left? If the engineers had planned it right, the crew would arrive back home with a substantial load of O2 to spare. So they have more than what they need to come back home after landing onto the moon. The commander glanced at the meter and froze. Now there is a problem. The quantity needed for tank 1 was well below full and visibly falling. You can see that they are losing oxygen very quickly. As Lovell watched, almost entranced, as if he was spellbound, he could see it easing downwards in an eerie slow motion slide. So oxygen is going out very quickly. This discovery, horrifying as it was, explained a lot. Whatever it was that had happened to Tank 2, that event was over. The tank had gone offline or blown its top or cracked a seam or something. But beyond the very fact of its absence, it has ceased to be a factor in the functioning of the ship. Tank 1, however, was still in a slow leak. Its contents were obviously streaming into space, and the force of the leak was no doubt what was responsible for the out of control motion of the ship. Now, by this time, the ship is shaking. So, that is one reason. The leak is a reason for that. It was nice to know that when the needle finally reached zero. Odyssey's oscillations would at last disappear. The downside, of course, was that so would its ability to sustain the life of the crew. Now they are losing oxygen means it will not be able to keep the lives safe of the people inside the spaceship. Lowell knew Houston would have to be alerted, so he knew he has to inform this to Houston, the main center. The change in the pressure was subtle enough that perhaps the controllers hadn't noticed it yet. The best way, the pilot's instinctive way, was to play it down. Keep it casual so he doesn't panic. He is just talking. Hey, you guys, notice anything about that other tank? Lowell nudged Swigert, pointed to the tank 1 meter, then pointed to his microphone. Swigert noted. Jack, the command module pilot, asked quite quietly, are you copying O2 tank 1 Cairo pressure? There was a pause. Maybe Luzma, now Luzma is in the main center, looked at Liebergott's monitor. Maybe Liebergott told him off the loop. Maybe he even knew already. That's affirmative, the Capcom said. Yes, it's confirmed that they are losing oxygen. As near as Lovell could tell, it would be a while before the ship's end game would play out. He had no way of calculating the leak rate in the tank, but if the moving needle was any indication, he had a couple of he had a couple of hours at least before 320 pounds of oxygen were gone. When the tank gasped at last, the only air and electricity left on board would come from the trio of compact batteries and a single small oxygen tank. These were intended to be used at the very end of the flight. So they have a small oxygen tank which is intended to be used at the end of the flight while they are coming back home from the moon. But now, unfortunately, they have to use that as well. When the command module would be separated from the service module and would still need a few bursts of power and a few puffs of air to see it through re-entry. The little tank and the batteries could run for just a couple of hours, combining this with what was left in the hissing oxygen tank. Odyssey alone could keep the crew alive until sometime between midnight and 3 a.m. Houston time. That means 3 hours. It was now a little after 10 p.m. So they had more than 3 hours, and this is serious. If they are losing oxygen means these three people are in trouble. So this is the passage. Houston, we have a problem. Now let's look at the questions given. First we'll look at the questions, A-type questions 1 to 5. Text level work. Question 1. When Lovell looked out of Apollo 13's window, what did he see? Question number 2. What did Liebergott think the spacecraft was venting? Number 3. We are told at one point that the commander froze. Why was this? Question number 4. How many hours of oxygen did the crew have left from when Lowell noticed that the quantity needle from tank 1 was well below full and visibly falling? Last question. What was the air in the small oxygen tank intended for? These are the first A-type questions, first 5 questions, and we'll look at the answers now. Answer 1. A thin white gassy cloud surrounding his craft, crystallizing on contact with space and forming an iridescent halo that extended tenuously for miles in all directions. Answer 2. Oxygen from tank 2. This is what Lieber got realized or thought that it was venting. Answer number 3. Lowell looked at his remaining oxygen tank and saw that it was well below full and visibly falling. How many hours left? Question 4. Answer is a couple of hours. And the last question, answer for the last question is that the small oxygen tank was intended for re-entry at the very end of the flight. B-type question 1. Explain the following in your own words. There are some phrases that you need to write in your own words. A. Paid off instantly. B. Matter of factness. C. Understated report. B-type question 2. Lowell repeats the information that they are venting something, perhaps to persuade himself. What impression does this give you of his state of mind at that time? Question number 3. What impression do you get of the sort of man Krantz is? What sort of man is he, Krantz? Question 4. Why do you think NASA designed its ships with backup system after backup system? Why do you think that NASA designed them like that? These are the answers for those 4 questions. Now, B-type question 1 was to explain those terms in your own words. First one, paid off instantly. So, the meaning is an immediate result. B, matter of factness means showing no emotion. C, understated report means a report which played down the actual situation. Then question 2 was, Lowell repeats the information that they were venting something, perhaps to persuade himself. What impression does this give you of his state of mind at that time? So the answer suggests that he was in control but knew that now the dangerous situation they were in. The repeated phrase was an attempt to keep a grip on himself, to calm himself down. Then third one is about Krantz. What sort of man was he? He is methodical and practical. He is not given to guessing and panicking, but to working through a problem, having ascertained all the facts. He is not guessing and panicking, very methodical and practical person, Krantz. Then the last one, why do you think NASA designed its ships with backup system after backup system? Suggests the design of the spacecraft was just for such an eventuality. One system goes down and a backup system can immediately take its place. This is how NASA has designed its spaceships. Now question C type. Find an example of each of the following in the extract. You have to find an example from the passage for a fact. Then find an opinion from the passage. Find a reaction. And the last one, a thought or feeling we can only know because Jim Lovell was actually there. Now he is writing this for us. So his exact thoughts and feelings can be expressed by himself only. So you have to find examples from the passage for them. Now let's look at the answers. Example of a fact. Now there can be many. This is only one example. Apollo 13, which had been launched in triumph, just over 2 days earlier. This is a fact. Something that can be proven is a fact, not an idea, not an opinion, but something which has proof. Then example of an opinion. Opinion is something which is thought by another person. They were probably in no imminent danger. Now you can't prove this. Maybe they are not in danger or maybe they are in danger. So it's an opinion. Then a reaction. As Lowell watched almost entranced. That's the reaction, entranced. Then example of a thought or feeling. Lowell drew a breath and suspected he might be in deep, deep trouble. These are some examples. There will be others. It's up to you to find a suitable example from the passage. Now we are coming to word level work. There are 12 words for which you need to find the meanings. So it's some of the meanings are given before we started. I have given you, so I am not going to give you the answers for this. You have to do it on your own. The 12 words are lunar, diagnosing, iridescent, tenuously, venting, analyzing, mandatory, vantage, palpable, metamorphosed, imminent, oscillations. So you may find the meanings from the dictionary as well for the ones which I have not given. The next lesson is about spelling. AI words. So it's common that we know certain words in English language will have this two vowels A and I giving the sound A, right? Air, certainly, ailing. And these other words like detail, brain, sustain, portrait, curtain, faith, and traitor. In all these words, you find the combination of the two vowels A and I together to give this spelling. You have to know the correct spellings and use them properly. Now we are coming to grammar and punctuation. Verbs, present tense, but actually we are talking about past tense as well. Remember, the simple past is used to talk about a completed action in a time before now. This is normally, you know what past tense is, right? We are talking about a completed action, something that has happened before now. Lowell drew a breath. Right? Past tense verb drew. How long the action took is not important. The time of that action may be recent or may be long ago. Anyway, it's done. It's over. That's what you need to know. For regular verbs, the simple past is formed by adding ed to the basic word that we know. There are two types, regular verbs and irregular verbs. So regular verbs form their past tense by adding ed. Talk plus ed, talked. Move plus ed, moved. Hatch plus ed, hatched. These are regular verbs. Some verbs are called irregular because they do not follow the regular rule of adding ed. These irregular verbs change their form when making the past tense to be, to have, to do, etc. Right? So to be, present tense is be verbs am. In past tense is was, not adding ed. Have, past tense is had. Do, past tense is did. Now if we consider the verb go. Past tense is went. So it's totally different. Not you. We don't add ed. We call these types of verbs irregular verbs. Here is the exercise for you to do. You have to change these sentences from the past tense into a question and a negative. Right? You are given the positive sentence and you have to form the negative sentence and the question. First one has been done for you. Apollo 13 flew to the moon. Now with the verb flew, which is the past tense of fly, we know that this is past tense and it's positive. Apollo 13 flew to the moon. Then how are we going to make the negative of that? It's by adding did not. Right? We have to, because we are talking about negative. No. So Apollo 13 did not, and then you have to use the present tense or the base form of the verb fly. Not did not flew, but you have to say did not fly to the moon. Apollo 13 did not fly to the moon. Then when you form the question, we begin the question with did. Did Apollo 13 fly to the moon? Now it's a question, so you have to put the question mark at the end as well. So once again, the positive sentence is Apollo 13 flew to the moon. Negative sentence is Apollo 13 did not fly to the moon. The question is, did Apollo 13 fly to the moon? Second sentence, a mysterious explosion rocked the ship. Now the verb given in this sentence is rocked. So that's positive. Now we have to make the negative. A mysterious explosion did not rock. No ed now. A mysterious explosion did not rock the ship. That is negative. Now we are asking the question. Did a mysterious explosion rock the ship? Did a mysterious explosion rock the ship? That is the question form. Number 3. Jim Lovell looked out of the window. You see the verb looked. L-O-O-K-E-D. Now we have to make the negative. Jim Lovell did not look out of the window. Look, no ed when it comes to negative because we are using did. Then we are asking the question. Did Jim Lovell look out of the window? Did Jim Lovell look out of the window? That is the question. So I think number 4, 5, 6, 7 you can do on your own, and I have given you the answers in the next slide. You may check your answers with these after doing it on your own. The last one is text level verb. Here we are discussing about writing autobiography. So we are going to discuss the language features we find in this passage. It's an autobiographical piece. The first language feature is third person. Rather than write a straightforward first-person account of the Apollo 13 mission, Jim Lovell and his co-author have written in the third person as if the whole thing had happened to someone else. But actually, it's the writer who is writing about himself, but as if it's written by somebody else. He says Lowell. Lowell looked out of the window. One reason the writer could have decided to do this is that the action is happening in two places, and Lowell, using the first person, could have recounted what was happening where he was. Right? So he is in the spacecraft. If he had written it autobiographically in first person, he can only write about what happened inside the spaceship. But at the same time, he is writing how other people reacted in the main space center. He writes about both places. Maybe because of that reason, he writes this in third person, not in first person, because usually autobiographies are written in first person. Then the second language feature we find here is autobiographical details. The writer has included his thoughts and feelings. Even though the style of the writing is biographical rather than autobiographical, Jim Lovell has included details of his thoughts and feelings that you would expect to find in an autobiography. Like, he felt strangely philosophical, he'd mourned this fact, right? In this, so that we see the features of an autobiography in this. That's why we call it an autobiography, other not a biography. Then the last one is viewpoint. As the action is taking place in two different places, the spaceship and mission control center, the reader sees the series of events in two viewpoints. The writer has moved from one to the other in turn, so the reader can see the drama unfold. So we can see the reactions in both places. What's happening in the spaceship, and then how the people in the mission control center react to that. So there are two viewpoints. These are the main language features that we see in this passage. So you have another writing assignment for you to do. Imagine you are one of the two astronauts who have made a successful landing on the moon. You leave your lunar model to gather moon rocks and then return. You go through the procedure to fire the rockets which will take you off the moon's surface back to the command module, but they don't fire. Write this series of events in the third person. Right? So it's given in your book. Try to write it using some of the features you find in the lesson we did today. And there is another personal choice activity. You can select one of the two given assignments and do. So I hope that you will do them and get more practice of these autobiographical and biographical writing. Let's come back to the summary of the whole lesson. So, Houston, we have a problem is a comprehension passage about what happened to Apollo 13. In this lesson, we learned new words and the meanings of most of them. So, try to add them to your vocabulary. Now that you know the meanings and how to use them, you better use them in your own work and show that you know more words, that you have added more words to your vocabulary. We also learned AI words, how to spell them correctly. In grammar, we learned how to form positive, negative statements and questions in past tense. And finally, we learned about autobiography writing in third person and what are the main language features in them. I hope you learned a lot in this lesson. Thank you all for watching.